Hey guys, it's Neffy. Thank you for joining me once again. As you guys know, I'm an urban apologist. I answer questions related to being Christian, being Black, and being woke. And today I want to give you 7 things you probably didn't know about the crucifixion. While I have you here, please make sure you like this video, comment, subscribe, ask me any questions in the comments and all that there, and hit the little bell clicky thingy. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to give you something light, kind of like an appetizer. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Passover was in commemoration of the Israelites being led out of Egypt, but it was also a prophecy of sorts, pointing forward to the future or then future sacrifice that Christ would make. As the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 5 verse 7, Christ is our Passover. Number dos. Something you probably didn't know is that the actual day of the month, the day of the week, and the very hour that Christ was going to be crucified was prophesied and kind of encoded in the ceremonial system, much like most of what we're going to talk about today. We find in Exodus 12 verse 6 that on the 14th day of the first month of the year was supposed to be the Passover. Now, it was not a coincidence that Jesus died on a Friday, what we now call Good Friday, the 6th day of the week. For centuries, God had ordained that the day after the Passover, the 15th of Abib, would be a ceremonial Sabbath day. This was to signify that Jesus would be crucified on the day before the actual weekly Sabbath. Leviticus 23 verse 6 and 7. And on the 15th day of the same month, in the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord, 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. So for those of you who are not familiar, not doing any work on that particular day was because they were to treat it as a Sabbath. And so they had the feast of unleavened bread for 7 straight days, but the first and the last were to be treated as particularly special and to be treated as the Sabbath day. When Jesus said it is finished, that was at like the 9th hour of the day. Exodus 12 verse 6 once again says, and you shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Now the margin reads, between the 2 evenings. Between the 2 evenings is the 9th hour of the day. Matthew 27 verse 45, now from the 6th hour there was darkness all over the land unto the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Some of them that stood there when they heard that said, this man calls Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. The rest said, let be, let us see whether Elias will come to save him. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. In other words, he died. He died when? At the 9th hour. Now remember, we're looking for the encoded. You know how they had these books with the Da Vinci Code, and they would like pull certain verses and like there's a secret code hidden here. Well, the code for the Bible, there is an actual code for the Bible. It's the code for the plan of salvation. It's the code for the crucifixion, and not just the crucifixion, but what the entire plan of salvation is, right? And that code is found in the ceremonial system with the sanctuary and all of these things that people often overlook. And so it's not a secret code. It's there for anybody who wants to study and pay attention to it. And it was put there with the intent that we would study it and be able to understand these spiritual things. So in this code, we find that the Passover lamb was supposed to be sacrificed between the 2 evenings at the 9th hour, and Jesus himself was sacrificed, or rather gave up the ghost at the 9th hour. In summary, for number 2, what we've learned is that it was prophesied that Jesus would die on the 6th day of the week, the day before the 7th day Sabbath, which is why the Jews had to keep the feast of unleavened bread and treat it like a Sabbath the following day after Passover. We also learned that the sacrificial lamb was to be slain at a particular hour and that Jesus died in that exact hour. So number 3, the Passover lamb had to be separated from the flock for a few days before the actual Passover. And we find that in starting with verse 3, speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, you shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And this is supposed to be the Passover lamb, as we see in verse 6. So they took the Passover lamb away from the rest of the flock a few days before the actual Passover. Now, how does this relate to Jesus? A few days before the Passover, the Sanhedrin made up their mind that they were going to kill Christ. And the Bible says that he walked no more among the Jews since that time. And this was a few days before the crucifixion. So for evidence of this, let's turn to John chapter 11. Starting from verse 47. Then gathered the chief priests and Pharisees a council and said, "What do we? For this man doth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him. And the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation." And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, "You know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. And this he spake not of himself, but being the high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth they took counsel together to put him to death. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence unto a country near the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and continued there, continued with his disciples. So from number 3, we see that it was a prophecy even that they had to remove the lamb from the flock and separate it a few days before, just as Caiaphas, not even realizing that he was doing the exact same thing by marking Christ's death, and selecting Christ as the particular lamb for sacrifice. He prophesied that he would die for the sins of the nation, right? Just as a Passover lamb died for the sins of the people. And Jesus removed himself from amongst the flock. Number 4, when Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" he was quoting Psalm 22, which contains a lot of prophecies concerning the crucifixion itself. Psalm 22, verse 1. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring?" Verse 6. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men, and despised of the people. All they that see me laugh me to scorn. They shoot out the lip, they shake the head, saying, He trusted the Lord that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, seeing he delighted in him. And verse 16. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. Clearly a prophecy concerning the crucifixion. Verse 18. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. We see this fulfilled in Matthew 27:35. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. So we see the Old Testament is full of prophecies concerning Jesus, things that we would often overlook. And it's not just in the ceremonial system, although a lot of attention should be paid there, because it seems that we kind of have lost the importance of it. We're not focused on that, right? So let's move on to number 5. We're counting down. We almost there. Number 5. Did you know that we still do celebrate Passover? It's just that we call it communion. The people of God no longer can get together and go to Jerusalem for Passover, for one, because when Jesus died, the temple was rent from top to bottom, right? The veil in the temple was rent from top to bottom, which signified that the presence of the Lord had departed from the temple. So the presence of the Lord, the Shekinah glory, as some people call it, right, was there to signify the Lord's acceptance of the sacrifices and the fact that he was there with the people. But at the moment that Christ died, the temple veil was torn. So when they got ready to offer that regular lamb, right? Just the regular old lamb, at that time or any time subsequent, it was in vain, because God had already shown and demonstrated that that time was over. The time to be offering lambs was over, because Jesus himself, the sacrificial lamb, the event that those lambs have been pointing to, had now come. And so it was no longer necessary for them to do them, nor was it acceptable. Jesus said to his disciples in 1 Corinthians 11, as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come. Number 6, the day after Passover was called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the 15th of Abib. It lasted 7 days. It was kept as a Sabbath no matter what day of the week it fell on. So if it fell on a Wednesday, guess what? They were not going to do any work that day, and they were going to treat it like they treat the seventh-day Sabbath. Leviticus 23 verse 6, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. Once again, this shows that Jesus would die on the 6th day of the week, and that there would be the day after Passover, the day after the crucifixion would be the 7th-day Sabbath. This is not a coincidence that Jesus died on a Friday. It was ordained, and they were supposed to have recognized this from engaging in the ceremonial system. That Sabbath was a high day, John 19:31, a high Sabbath, because it was a kind of like a double Sabbath. So it was an actual weekly Sabbath as well as a ceremonial Sabbath at the same time. The Feast of Unleavened Bread also represents the fact that Christ would have no sin. He would be a sinless man. Leaven in this context represents sin. How do we know this? 1 Corinthians 5, starting from verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And this is kind of like just a quick little shoot that I'm trying to do to get you guys to understand some things. But if you would like an in-depth study, check out the video. I don't know. Remember which way it's supposed to be, but check the video out that's popping up on the screen right now. Number 7. We done made it number 7, y'all. Do you know why Jesus told Mary not to touch him? So the Friday was Passover. That's the 14th. The 15th is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That is unleavened bread. That is on the Sabbath. The day after the Sabbath, being the first day of the week, was the Feast of First Fruits. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Leviticus 23 verse 10. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. So it's no coincidence that Jesus resurrected on the first day of the week, the day after the Sabbath. Okay, so a sheaf by definition is a bundle. The priest did not go forward with just one blade of wheat, but he went forward with a bunch of wheat, right? And waved that before the Lord as the commandment says. This was a representation for them, a small representation of the entire harvest that was going to be reaped shortly thereafter, right? So when they started to reap, the first thing they do is they present the sheaf offering, and then they go and actually reap the fields. And in similar fashion, Christ presented himself as the first fruit sheaf wave offering before the actual harvest, which is something that Revelation talks about a lot, takes place. And just as a bundle is not just one blade of wheat, Jesus did not resurrect by himself. We read in Matthew 27, starting from verse 52, and the graves were open, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city, and appeared unto many. Ephesians 4, verse 8 says, wherefore he says, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive, and gave gifts unto men. Now the margin here reads that he led a multitude of captives. He led a multitude of captives. He led a lot of people who were asleep in the grave up to their resurrection alongside with him. So no portion of the first fruits was ever burned by fire like some of the other sacrifices. And this is symbolic of the fact that none of Christ's harvest will be burned in the lake of fire. He is the first of the harvest that will be reaped of humanity from death. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 20, but now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. So what this got to do with why he didn't let Mary touch him? We're getting there. Give me a second. Here we go. He went to present himself before the Father between the time that he saw Mary and the time that he saw the rest of the apostles or disciples. John 20, starting from verse 17. Jesus said unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, when the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled for fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in the midst, and said unto them, Peace be unto you. So he told her to tell them that he was going to go to his Father. So we see right then and there that that's what happened, right? Later that same day, he allowed them to touch him because he had already gone to the Father. Matthew 28 and verse 9. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, All hail. And they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Now, I have to do a whole separate video on this, but I want you guys to understand that what we think when we think the day changes is not when the day changes. The day does not change at some obscure time in the middle of the night that we call midnight, and you can't tell when one day has happened, when one day has ended and the next day has begun, unless you have a clock and you can tell that it's midnight. That's not the way the Lord designed it. That's actually something that the Romans came up with. God, when he created this earth, established that a day begins at sunset. In a 24-hour period, the darkness comes first before the light. When we read in Genesis chapter 1, we see that there was darkness upon the face of the earth, and then the Lord said, let there be light. So there's darkness first, and then there's light in a 24-hour period. Let's go to Genesis 1 verse 5. And you can see this throughout the entire chapter. Whenever he's talking about the next day, it says the evening and the morning. Genesis 1 verse 5 says, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So a day ends when the sun sets. Once the sun sets, the day is over. The next day has begun. This is why for Jewish holidays, they typically start on the night before. So once again, Jesus died during the daytime on Friday. The next day, which was the Sabbath, began at sunset. John 19:31. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation, that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken, and that they might be taken away. Then came the soldiers and brake the legs of the first and the other which was crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. So Jesus died before the Sabbath, before the sunset, on Friday. And people not knowing and understanding this causes a lot of confusion and has people trying to figure out how was Jesus dead for 3 days? It must have started on Thursday or Wednesday. He couldn't, because they don't understand that the actual 24-hour period begins at night. So when Jesus was on the cross, it was a Friday, right? Friday afternoon, and he died on a Friday afternoon. And then that sunset, Friday night, began the next day. So he was there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those 3 days. Now, hopefully this study has helped you to gain an interest in studying the Old Testament. Like I said at the beginning, a lot of times we kind of overlook these things and sweep them under the rug and not really pay attention to them because we don't understand their significance. And that's kind of like a circular thing because we don't understand their significance because we're ignoring them. But the Lord has taken very meticulous time and effort and energy into helping us understand certain things, and he put those things in the law. And the more we study the Old Testament, the more the New Testament will come to life. Let me know if you guys have any questions. My email address is on the screen. I try my best to respond to all emails. I know that some of this material might have been a little heavy. I try to keep it as light as possible. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and share and all that there. Let me know if you learned anything or if you knew all of this, and if you'd like me to continue to do videos that show the hidden gems of the Old Testament and how they're revealed in the New Testament. Until next time, stay Christian, stay Black, stay woke.